Like the word narcissism. How many of you have called somebody a narcissist? Right? Because it meant that they were selfish, or it meant that they didn't do what you wanted, or it meant that it's kind of was circling around them, but they might have just been a selfish person at that moment. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're a full-blown narcissist. And that's what we'll do with terms like ADHD or something like that. If you're a little hyper one day, yeah, that's the ADHD kicking in, or that's this or that, and we'll take those things and we'll make labels out of them when they come in handy, or when we just want to express ourselves. And so that can downplay something that can be really dangerous, or it can upplay something, that's not there, right? So one of the biggest causers, we'll have proper English here, of ADHD is trauma. And you can have a fast-paced brain already, where it just zips. Like, I finish people's sentences, and when someone's talking to me, he's talking slow, my leg will start going because I'm already at the end of their sentence and they're not there. I'm like, come on, I can do it for you. I'll finish it. I mean, just let me, and so I have to rein my brain back in. It's always been that way. I scored something like an 82 or something on the ADHD little scale that they have. But does that mean that now I have this disorder that, is wrecking my life? No, not necessarily. But if you add trauma to anything that's already sitting there, whether your processor in your brain fires too slow or it fires too fast, you add trauma to it, that's what makes a mess of things. And then in trauma, anger always follows. Because wherever there's trauma, you end up grieving something. Wherever you grieve something, now you're going to get mad somewhere in that process. First, you're in shock that it happened. Then you're bartering back and forth to get it to go away. Now we're getting mad because we can't get it to go away. And we're starting to face that this thing really happened. And anger is a secondary emotion. We've talked a lot about that here at Word of Life. It's a secondary emotion, which means you feel an emotion first, and then you're mad that you felt it, right? So if we've been traumatized by people, if we have lack in our life, if there's constant yelling or bickering and things like that as we're growing up, if we have a fast-paced brain, now what we did is we exaggerated something that just was a normal thing that was there. Just that's how my brain fires. It's a little faster. You add the trauma to it, it's like adding a poison to it, an excitotoxin that explodes. Now you can comment at times where you don't feel traumatized or you're not triggered in that trauma. You got the brain that's just like, okay, it's still going fast and I'm okay. But if you relive something that happened to you, somebody yells at you now in this hour, it will re-trigger that and you'll find yourself not being able to think. It will go all over the place. It's almost like someone doing this in your face. You all know what I'm talking about. See, there's some heads nodding here. And then it takes time to get the adrenaline down. It takes time to get that out of your system enough so that you're like, I can think again, right? But when you're in that worst moment and someone says, well, you have ADHD or you're suffering with such and such. In that worst moment, it's like, yeah, you feel like you're crazy. You feel like you've lost control of everything. And really, it's a trauma-based thing that aggravated a brain that just was firing fast. Creative brains do fire fast, right? So we want to have a faster firing brain. We want to have that creativity alive and well in us. So I wanted to just give that base. The Bible also talks about, things like, going to sleep on your anger, and not having anger resolved really means you don't have the grief resolved, which really means you don't have the pain resolved. And it's sitting there aggravating the brain, draining the good chemicals out of our brain while it's causing the bad chemicals, if you want to use it like that, just to break it down, to aggravate the situation. And you can actually get brain damage out of that. People who have been through extreme trauma, maybe were not born with dyslexia, but can develop dyslexia just from the trauma. The brain will start to be overexcited to the point that it will not flip things the way that it should. And you can have dyslexic things that will go on for a phase of time, and then all of a sudden you have peace in your life and everything, and the brain reroutes itself and you don't have it anymore. Isn't that wild? That's wild how it goes. So part of what we're learning here tonight is God has made us really intricate, but he's made us for a place of peace. That's where his spirit is to rest on us. He is the Prince of Peace, and he wants us to sit in that moment with him and be complete. And wherever we don't feel complete, we're agitated. And wherever we're agitated, there's a revving up of the brain, and then it moves fast. So how that deals with bipolar, and what I wanted to kind of set before Kim comes up and speaks, is it's a platform then. Not always, but it can be a platform when you traumatize a fast-firing brain. It's a platform for the high highs and the low lows to get going. And even if your processor likes to really be technical, and that would appear like you have a slow firing brain, no, your brain's just being more technical about what's going on. Even if that's taking place, now did we just lose? Hit me again. So now what was I saying? It's a platform for like bipolar symptoms to sit on. You're going to start the yo-yo effect of high highs and low lows. You can also have a yo-yo effect from blood sugar issues. So if you take a child who's just normal pace and their blood sugar is doing fine, their insulin levels are fine, but you traumatize them over and over and over, now they're going to have big blood sugar swings. And when you have insulin swings, you're going to get really moody. And that's misinterpreted. So these are just some of the things I wanted to throw out to you. We have to understand that just because we saw something online, took a test, doesn't mean, like, wow, I can't control myself because I took this test and now I realize, I'm at an 82% of whatever. But it also says that it's a platform that if I aggravate it with trauma, it's going to take a certain route. And we have to understand that about how we are made. God intended us for peace. So right now I'm going to invite Kim Wessel to come on up. She's a nurse of 22 years, an RN, has worked as a charge nurse in different hospitals, and we just want to welcome her. Let's give her a hand.
I think this is on. So thank you so much for having me here tonight. So as I was saying before the mics died, I've been a nurse for 22 years. I've worked in the ICU for probably the first 10 years of my life, ICU critical care. The last 10 years after that, I was in the emergency room, some of it downtown St. Paul, some of it actually in Cambridge, and then I did a couple years in surgery. So I have a big gamut of experience and a big gamut of dealing with people on multiple different levels. And what I really found out in healthcare is that healthcare doesn't really understand mental health. And I'm not here today to tell you to not listen to your doctor. I'm not here today to give you advice as a medical advice, like take this medicine or do this over here. But I am here today to have you guys question what it is that you've heard. Because people go to the doctor and they're either sold on it hook, line, and sinker, and they follow them and they'll do whatever the doctor says, or they don't listen to it at all. It seems like there's two camps. So if you took your car to a mechanic and the mechanic said all kinds of stuff, would you go home and research it because you didn't believe it? I don't know anything about cars, but I go home and research it. People spend very little amount of time researching some things before they take medicine, before they label themselves, before they live out a label. And I really want people to stop and think about what it is that you've been told and how it is that you were told that. It doesn't mean that that's not the case. Maybe some of you are living with some bipolar problems. Maybe you guys are living some sort of other mental health issues. Or maybe you're running through a system and no one's hearing you like they should. That's the thing, I think, in healthcare that's been the most frustrating for me. So when you look at healthcare and you look at people going through just chemical dependency programs, a lot of insurances won't pay for it anymore because they have a 3% success rate. Isn't that sad? Because insurance and hospitals can't teach grace. And there's a big difference. There's a big difference in what people go through every day when you take somebody and you go through the 12-step program, and I'm not saying they're bad programs, but there's nothing that is better than grace, right? So stop and think about that. When we talk about some of this stuff with mental health tonight, I really want you guys to think and line up questions, write them down for me, and I'll answer them the best I can when we're done. So bipolar is a serious mental illness that has really risen in the United States in general over the past decade. It's common between the ages of 18 and 35, but it's every age. I struggle with believing people who's like, yes, my 3-year-old has bipolar. I have 4 kids, and they were all bipolar when they were 3 years old, and 4, and some of them struggled in their teens. So your frontal lobe isn't even developed till you're 25 years old. So how can we say that that's exactly where this kid is going? How can we say that this is gospel? Well, that kid had a tantrum and he's super angry and he's super whatever behavior he's having. How many kids have tantrums? I had some tantrums when I was a kid. Sometimes I want to have an adult tantrum. I'm not bipolar, but sometimes I want to have an adult tantrum. I'm not saying it's the right idea. There are 4 different types of bipolar. So bipolar 1, there's bipolar 2, there's cyclothymic disorder, and then they left a blanket open, and they call it other specified and unspecified and related traits of bipolar. Well, that's like saying, like they do that with autism too, the autism spectrum disorder. Like, we don't know what to call you, so we're just going to throw you in this category here. So, when you think about bipolar people, and you think about people that are struggling with it, there are manic episodes where people are just super elated. These are the kind of people, like, they can conquer anything. It's sort of interesting, when I was in college, one of my college professors said, and this is no offense to car salesmen, but they said really good car salesmen usually are manic. And I mean, I've dealt with a lot of car salesmen, and some of them, I'm like, boy, I just wonder if that's kind of what's going on, because they're so just hyped up on what they're doing. It doesn't mean that they're all bipolar. I'm just saying people that are in that industry where they just have to perform, it puts them under pressure, and they have to rise to that. All of a sudden, something flips over in their brain, and they can't shut it off. So then they stay like that. I've taken care of some patients. It'll be weeks before they go to bed. 3 weeks they'll be up because they're in some manic phase. Then you take that population that they're struggling with bipolar and they start doing drugs, and you throw like cocaine or methamphetamine or something in there. How do you get that to stop? Because now you've taken a brain and it's just going to keep firing and firing and firing and firing, and then all of a sudden they sleep for like 3 days straight. So that is what happens, and you see a lot of people, unfortunately, who are really, truly bipolar, and they're really, truly struggling with it, self-medicate, and they get stuck in that cycle. So all of a sudden, they're doing meth when they're feeling depressed, they're doing some cocaine, trying to get themselves up, and then they start doing the downers, right? They start drinking, they start doing all the stuff that helps them go back to sleep because they can't get the regulation there. So I've seen that with a lot of people. So then they get the other label, well, they're chemically dependent and they're non-compliant because they didn't take their psych meds. And they're just falling through the cracks all over because they didn't have the thing that they needed the most, and that was a safety net to keep them accountable for what they need to be doing. Right? So when you think about people in manic episodes, and sometimes I do joke about this myself because I need a good manic episode to get some of the stuff I have to get done. They're high energy. They're just moving all the time. And then you see them go into that depression period of sadness where they're hopeless. They'll stay in bed. It's like you can't get through to them. It's super frustrating for the people that live with them. It's super frustrating for their employers because they call in sick all the time. It's super frustrating for any sort of job where they have to be in a high performance area. So depression itself is a totally different thing than being bipolar. So when you look at people like, oh, they're completely depressed, depression can be situational. Depression can be, some people just struggle because their hormones are off, their chemicals are off. Some people struggle with depression because they live in a situation that constantly is oppressing them. People who are in like domestic violence, those sort of, now the proper politically correct term would be intimate partner violence. If you're in one of those relationships, there is always an element of depression. You cannot be living with someone abusing you and then function as a normal person and feel good every day. That's not how the body was wired. People were made to be cherished. People were made to be in relationship with each other where they love each other and they respect each other, and everybody is looking out for the best of themselves and the other person first. And a lot of people who are struggling with mental health never got to have that experience in their life. The first person that teaches you how to love yourself should be your family, right? Should be the people that brought you home from the hospital, that brought you into this world. And when your parents drop the ball, then who teaches you how to love you, right? So we got to stop and think about that piece of it all. What sets bipolar apart? So bipolar 1, generally they tend to be extreme. So these are the extremists. We're talking about the 3 weeks awake, 3 weeks sleeping. They're restless, they have trouble concentrating, they feel euphoric. These are also the people that are at high risk. Like, I've had patients show up to the ER, they can't tell me their name. They've gambled or spent all their money, or someone exploited them, they have no wallet, they have no identification. They're the people that their families, they're like, well, I don't know where they went. We've been looking for them for months. And sometimes they never find them because these poor people never do remember who they are. So they go out and they're doing all sorts of things. They wind up on trains and buses and all over the United States. Those are bipolar 1 people. And you have to have some sort of safety net if that is somebody, if you know somebody that's struggling with that, get them the bracelet like the diabetic person wears. Get them something that identifies them, so when they show up someplace like an ER, because the police don't know what to do with them, so that's where they're going to bring them. At least the healthcare worker's like, well, I don't know what to do with them. I don't even know who you are. So those are the things that people need to be aware of if you have a family member or if you're struggling with bipolar yourself, especially bipolar 1. There is a difference, and I just wanted to point this out after probably the last 5 years. What I've really seen in the ER when I left there, and it was one of the reasons that I left there, was violence. People do get violent. People with mental health issues do get violent, but having a mental health diagnosis is not an excuse to be violent. It's not an excuse to attack your nurse, right? Like, my shifts at United when I worked there were like a UFC fight. I cannot tell you how many times I would have patients come in and they would just tear through that ER. When Maplewood, St. John's Hospital, that gentleman that died after he broke the nurse's arms and threw the IV pole at him, he was in a manic state. And unfortunately, it was sad is they didn't have their ER set up where they were keeping themselves safe and where they're keeping him safe. So people get violent, they don't remember what they're doing. What sends a good nurse off is people who come in, they're like, yeah, I'm bipolar and I feel like I'm just gonna lose it. Okay, if you're feeling like that and you know it, stop what you're doing and we need to get you to a place where you can either sit in a room by yourself, do something, because you don't get to hurt anybody else in the process of this. And that's where families, and that's where friends, and that's where bridges get burned with people that are struggling with this disorder, because they're so focused on what their disorder is that they're not thinking about the other people around them. So in this world where we have to make it all work together, people who have bipolar 1 need a really strong support system. They need somebody that can come alongside of them and say, hey, I noticed you're struggling. I noticed right now that, when's the last time you slept? Like, you haven't showered for a couple days. Like, what's going on? You're working too many hours. You're doing some things that you shouldn't be doing, and it's going to tip you off the edge, and we want to keep you in moderation. God is a God of moderation, right? So he doesn't do everything in extreme, and even he knew when to rest. On the 7th day, he rested, right? So we have to stop and do self-care. I'm a big fan of self-care, and I think for years, even in my profession, I worked straight nights for a while. I had small kids. I didn't get a lot of time to do self-care, so I am making up for some lost time. Definitely making up for lost time. But I talk about this with my teenagers right now, especially my daughter. And I'm like, what'd you do for self-care today? Like, what today did you do just for you, just to reset yourself so that your bucket's not empty? Because that's an important piece of people's lives that they need to keep together, right? So these people have when you have some bipolar, you have obvious mood swings, okay? And God loves you the same. Everybody in this church is going to love you the same. But how do we keep you as high functioning as you can be and feeling successful? Because when you have all those ups and downs, and then you're like, oh man, that was bad. Probably shouldn't have done that. It doesn't feel very good, right? And no one wants to feel like that. People want to feel successful, and they want to feel good about themselves, and want to feel good about the things that they do. Um, and that's what makes people want to keep doing what they're doing, is that feeling. And every time, actually, believe it or not, that you have that feeling, whether you accomplish something, you painted your wall, it looks great, you went for a walk, you feel good, it just releases some dopamine in your brain that tells the rest of you, hey, it's going to be okay. Like, a little bit of dopamine goes a long way. So when you talk about people getting the runner's high, like the athletes that run and they get that runner's high, which I've actually experienced, um, if I go out running, I have to run 11 minutes before I start to feel that runner's high. It's awesome. And it takes all those endorphins in your body and all the things in your brain, and it starts to make that positive energy in your body. You can take all the medicine you want, but it will never do what God designed your body to do. It will never be the same. So I'm not saying don't take medicine if that's what you really need to do to keep it together. What I am saying is start building that network for yourself that keeps you on the straight and narrow, so to speak, and that keeps you in a spot where you can be successful and feel good about what you're doing and feel good every day, like, hey, I got this. If all of us really took a big, brutally honest look at our life, we are all a little bipolar, right? I've had some bipolar moments. We are all a little up and down. There is nobody that can live like this. There are things that happen in life that are just, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. And now we're seeing mental health stuff rising because of this past year. So we took the entire nation, which 60% of the nation are from split families, right? So there's already tension because we've got everybody's, this one's living with this person, and the family dynamic, the nuclear family's already been struggling in the United States. So 60% of the United States has been married and divorced. Most of them have kids. Now we've told them all to go on to lockdown, right? Stay in your house. Everybody's going to quarantine for this virus that was supposed to be so great. And mental health issues are rising through the roof because you can't take a bunch of people that had a dysfunctional relationship and lock them in the same place together. That is a bad idea. Nothing good ever comes out of that. So domestic violence has gone up. Child abuse has gone up. People who are struggling with their mental health has gone up. China, I was reading their research, it's through the roof over there. And I think that's probably globally. So it's sad as a nation or as people, like we should be wanting to be with the people that we're related to and be with them all the time because we love them. But we haven't figured out the dynamics of that all. So then we did this whole quarantine for a year and the whole nation got shook down, and now we're just seeing there's not enough room in the mental health suites. There's not enough beds in the state. And the thing with, I know we call them suites in the hospital. Here's your suite. Here's your suite. There's no shower. Your TV's locked into the wall, and I'll feed you 3 times a day. I don't really feel like that's a very humane way to take care of people. I don't really feel like that makes people successful while they wait for placement. Sometimes it's weeks before people can get placement, and I've had to place people out of state because Minnesota did not have beds in the state. So, and so then you take them and you put them in a group of people, and I'm not saying that what's happening in group therapy in the hospital is a bad thing. What I'm saying is you're with a bunch of people that, if you're going to this mental health facility and you're in your therapy and you spend a month there, you spend 6 weeks there, and you're doing good because you've made some relationships there, and all of a sudden we just throw you out in the community again, where's your support system? What's going to make you not have to go through this again? Like, what's going to set this next time to be different, right? Because we're always looking for that next time to be different. What are we going to do? And then you go to the ER, and I'll just own this like a boss. ER nurses can be super jaded, and they can be downright cold, right? Right. And sometimes, as an ER nurse, I've had to be stern with people. I would not ever want to be cruel to somebody, especially in a mental health crisis. Now, if you're threatening to break my neck, odds are probably pretty good you could do it, but we're not going to go down that road. But I don't have those sort of problems with people. People don't get violent with me, but I also don't get in their face, and it's all in how you talk to people, right? It's all in how you talk to people. So even people that are coming down off of meth and they don't know what they're doing, I don't have those problems with them because it's all in the approach that you take. So it's hard when people are in the ER because there's not a lot of resources. and there's not a lot of beds. And the state of Minnesota is not giving out any extra beds. St. Joe's Hospital right now is going to become the mental health because it doesn't pay any money. Because, no, they're not going to say that. Reimbursement for mental health stuff is poor. It's poor. So St. Joe's Hospital will become the next homeless shelter / mental health hospital. And so what happened in healthcare, this is just a little caveat, is right in the peak of this COVID-19, they closed their hospital, never said anything about it, took the COVID hospital, Bethesda, and shut that. So then they kind of moved those patients over there and shut all their ORs, and it just swamped the rest of the system. And part of it has to do with funding. So I'm not in those meetings, but I just know that it greatly affected my workflow. So that is kind of the life of like when you're an ER nurse, back to that whole thing. ER nurses can be jaded, but to our defense, it is incredibly hard to take care of somebody in one room who's dying and somebody over here that's having this problem. And there comes a point in time when you have to just shut it off, right? You got to shut that piece of your life off for a little bit because you're not going to make it through the tasks that you have to get through to save this person over here and to keep this person over here safe and get through your shift. So there comes a real fine balancing act, and the burnout rate for an ER nurse is pretty high. I myself was pretty burnt out when I left. So bipolar 2, you still have depressive moods. They're not quite as long. There is something called hypomania, which is like mania, but not quite as manic. You're not quite as over the top. People who have true mania, they talk so fast sometimes. I can't even understand what they're saying. They talk so fast, and they're gonna conquer the world. Like the last person I took care of that was really manic, he was a drummer, and he was a drummer for every 80s rock band there was. I thought, if you truly did this, you're my hero. Like, every one of them. So, but he was in that manic phase. So I just talked about it. It was a good time. But people who are hypomanic are a little more slower than that. Cyclothymic disorder, I've yet to see that really used a lot, but it is an actual disorder that people will get labeled as. I don't see a lot of people coming in through the ER that say that they have that. They're either saying they're bipolar or they're not. They mainly have low-level depression, basically, depressive symptoms, and then they'll have periods of mania. And then the last one, like I talked about, is the other specified and unspecified bipolar-related disorders. So sometimes to me that says, well, I don't really know what to call you, so I'm just going to call you that. Like you've got unspecified bipolar, or you've got, and it's hard because when psychiatrists and doctors are making some of these labels on people and they're putting these diagnoses in, how much time do they really spend with you? Let's say you went for let's say you went for 6 therapy treatments and now they're going to call you bipolar. You've spent 6 hours of your entire life with one person who's never met you before. So wouldn't you kind of question what's going on there? Because I would question that. Yeah. I'm not saying that they're wrong, and I'm not saying that there's not true characteristics that are just so blatantly obvious, like this person is definitely struggling with this. I'm not saying that's not the case, but I think that it takes a long time for people with mental health disorders to really establish a relationship with somebody that can help them, right? And that you can trust them, because you already don't really trust people. Most people are struggling with mental health disorders I've met, they're not so very trusting because it's not been such a good ride for them. Right? Yeah. So then you're supposed to go in and you're supposed to tell these people your story in an hour, and then they're going to come up with a diagnosis and you're going to take a medicine to fix it, right? Right. Right. So I don't know. I don't really feel like in the United States it's working that great. I'm not saying people shouldn't go in if they need help. If you're suicidal, if you feel like you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else, you need to be someplace where you can be safe. And the ER is the safest place you can be, right? So that's just something to think about when you're thinking about getting like a mental health diagnosis and doctors helping you and people that step in and help you. What causes bipolar disorder? Nobody knows. Trauma can cause it. Trauma will definitely flip it into gear. But if you can't go in and get genetically tested for bipolar disorder, you can't go in and get blood drawn and they're like, oh yeah, your level of bipolar is super high today. Whoa. There's no such thing that can do that. Now, people will struggle with mental health problems sometimes, and their electrolytes will be off. If your sodium is super high or super low, people have seizures from that. They have all kinds of goofy confusion. They get delirious. You don't see that in the general population. You see that with people that have kidney problems, or a lot of older people that are on certain medications. You'll see that with. Actually, when your sodium level is low, your brain actually swells. So that will cause you to be confused. Traumatic head injuries, those sort of things, those cause you to be confused. So nobody really knows what causes bipolar. They're thinking there's some abnormal characteristics of the brain and that it tends to run in families. So let's stop that right there. Let's just stop and just talk about what runs in families. Did you learn some of this behavior from people? Right? So when somebody said, hey, go do that, or something went wrong and your dad flew off the handle, like my dad would fly off the handle and throw some pipe wrenches around at us, that's not normal. Like, we can all have a bad day and not throw a pipe wrench at somebody. We can all have a bad day and not flip out. But if you take a kid from the time they're little and that's what you're training them and that's how you behave with them, why wouldn't they do anything different? You just taught them how to do that. There have been some times as a parent, it's so humbling. Like, I have been so humbled raising kids, especially raising my daughter, because I would say to my husband, well, I don't get why she's doing that. He's like, well, because you do it. Well, that's rude, but it's honest. It was brutally honest. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do that. And that's awful. Oh, so then I had to grow up in some areas, right? I had to learn, like, to bite my tongue and grow up. And that's hard. And I would be so annoyed with her because what she was doing was annoying. But she learned it from me. Who knew? Right? So if you're growing up in a home that's full of volatile behavior, right? Well, what happens as a parent when you just explode on your kid? And then you calm down, and then what? You don't feel so good, right? So, oh, honey, come on, let's go get some ice cream. And now you've created the yo-yo, right? And that happened to some of you guys in here. Yeah. And then you don't know, because, like, when you're in the middle of a crisis, all of a sudden your ability to respond has to be so ingrained in you that it's second nature. Like, you don't stop to think about, oh yeah, I cannot lose my mind here. I got to do this, right? You just want to explode, especially when, like, you tell your kids, please don't put whatever, don't do this, you'll break the window, and they break the window, right? And then you have to stop and step back and say, it was just a window. We can buy a new window, but it's annoying because I don't want to pay for the window, but now I have to. But in the grand scheme of life, there's eternity in every single thing we do, right? So if we explode on our kids, and then their little trauma starts, right? And all their dopamine receptors start to fire different in their brain. And all their serotonin levels start to do things differently in their brain. And I'll be the first one to say I've yelled at my kids. I'm not going to lie. There have been days, did not have a good mommy day. On a consistent basis, I do not yell at my kids. It doesn't get anything, it doesn't accomplish anything. I don't yell at people. Even when I was in management, I've never yelled at somebody. I did question some things that people did, like, why would you ever do that? And you know what? I found out there's a reason that people do things that make sense to them. And that's why they did it. Nobody in this room is going to go out and be like, I have no idea why I'm going to do this. It makes absolutely no sense. It could possibly kill me, but I'm just going to do it. Why would you do that? Right? So it makes sense to people. And people in the world that they live in, there are things that don't make sense to us, but it definitely makes sense to them. And so then in this society that we lived in, everybody's striving for normal, right? Well, what is normal? So I take the word normal and just throw it out. Just get rid of it. What's balanced? Where's the balance in your life? Where is, I got enough sleep last night, I am eating a good diet, I exercise and take care of myself. I said no because I don't want to do 12 other projects to this project that someone wanted me to take on because I need some me time. I'm going to do this here little community outreach thing because that's my opportunity to give to the community because this is what I have for balance in my life, right? So if you're struggling with bipolar and you start doing some of those things, your bipolar is going to start leveling out, right? But the other thing that people experience when you start growing up in a house where you're yelled at, where people make mountains out of molehills, is you take that person and you shame them, right? And then you throw a label on them, which shames them some more, right? And then now we expect you to, I don't know, take a little pill and then be like everybody else. That's not how the human brain and the human emotion was ever made to work. That's not how you cherish somebody. That's not how you place value on people. That is not how you create an environment that's safe for people to survive in. That is not how you take somebody and you say, okay, you can live on your own and you can manage stuff and you can pay your bills and you can get your groceries, and it doesn't set you up for success. So when I look at things like with my kids that they've tried to do and they couldn't do, or even myself, and I'm like, yeah, I probably didn't set myself up to succeed on that one, because I didn't have a good plan going into it, right? So there wasn't a safety net there. And the other thing that that happens in a home that's volatile is you don't get to fail. What is wrong with failing? Like, what would be the worst thing that happened? I can remember when I was 16 years old, I saved up my money working at Pizza Hut. I made $2.43 an hour plus tips. It was huge. So I bought this car. It was a Buick Skylark, and it was ugly. And I drove it home, and I was so proud of this car. And I could barely drive it because it was a stick shift, and I didn't know what I was doing. And so I get it in the driveway, and our driveway was at a slant. And I didn't realize that when I had the door open, I put my foot on the clutch, and it slid backwards. And my dad, we grew up on a farm, and we had moved to the cities, and we had a John Deere tractor with a quack digger. Do you know what a quack digger is? Those rungs come like this. They're big metal rungs. And it caught the edge of the door and ripped it right off my car. So I had it for less than a week. I was so ashamed. I couldn't even speak. I was beyond ashamed. I just thought, this is it. I am a complete failure. And now I look at it and I can laugh. But at the time, it was such a big deal to me. And I can remember my mom was very understanding, and my dad was like, oh, how could you do something so stupid? And I just felt so dumb. It's a car. Like, I have done some dumb things to my cars. I've done some dumb things because I'm human. And I get to be human. And the car is in a junkyard somewhere, and I'm still being human over here. So it's really not worth the effort that it would take to get mad at it. So on top of it all, being like 17, 18 years old, I had to have my car door tied on and then drive through town where everyone could see me to take it to the mechanic to fix it. It was so humiliating. So now at this point, if I rip my car door off, I would just drive it and be like, whatever. I did it.
Amen.
I did it, and I'm going to own it like a boss, and people should be proud of me. But when you shame somebody, then you wind up with people that can't even identify their own feelings, right? So the one thing, like when you grow up in a house where people are always volatile and there's this whole big bipolar swing that's happening, is then people stop talking because they don't want to be shamed anymore. So we have a standing rule in our house. If you broke it, you ate it and you shouldn't have, you got in trouble at school, whatever, the cop stopped you because you were speeding. If you come to me and talk to me about it, there is no consequences whatsoever. None. And we have truth and confession night at our table at least once a week. And we just all get it out on the table. Yeah, I ate all the ham the other day. I got stopped by a police officer because I was speeding. I mean, it happens. Life happens like that, and you can't shame people about it because it wrecks them. Right? So healthcare can be shaming. How many times have people gone to their doctor or their healthcare and they're like, well, they didn't take their medicine like they were prescribed. They're being non-compliant. That's the big word that goes in your chart, non-compliant. And I'm a nurse, and I've been non-compliant. I'm not saying that's what people should do, but sense and reasoning told me don't do this because it doesn't make any sense, right? So I like to get 2 or 3 different opinions. If I have a contractor come out to my house to put in a window, I'm going to get 2 or 3 different bids. If I went to see a mental health professional to see what's wrong with me, I'm going to get a couple different opinions. That's important. That's the important part of self-care. Valuing yourself enough, because just because somebody has a big fancy title or a degree behind their name or did whatever in their life, doesn't make them the person that gets to direct your life the way that it's supposed to go. You do. God does. Right? So stop and think about that when you even seek healthcare in general. Stop and think about that. There's a lot of times in healthcare, healthcare is regulated by protocols. It's regulated by insurance companies. It's regulated by all these different regulating bodies that come in, like Joint Commission and all those sort of things. So there have been times as a manager, I'm like, I have no idea why we're doing this, but Joint Commission wants us to do it. So we did it. It didn't make any sense to me. A lot of it's for there's a lot of great safety things that come out of those sort of things, and then there's some things that just don't make sense. Do it make sense? Right? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about neurotransmitters. So, nobody knows what causes bipolar. So we talked a little bit about nature versus nurture, right? So how many of us got yelled at as kids? How many of those sort of things? What are the tendencies, and if there's no guidance there to help you find a happy medium, how do you do it? How do you simplify your life? How do you break it down? So in a nursing world, if people come in through the door, I have 50 patients walk in, I'm sitting in triage. I'm going to triage them. That means to sort. It's French. It means to sort them out. Who's the sickest? Who's the least sick? So sort out your life. Sometimes I sort out my life. I tell my husband sometimes, I'm decluttering my life of negativity, and I just start sorting it out. That's what I have to do. Because if I don't, it's going to start dragging me down. So serotonin levels. You have neurotransmitters in your brains. Serotonin and dopamine are the two biggest ones, right? So serotonin is low levels of it do not necessarily cause depression, but it is associated with depression. So I did put some of these medications that are on there. Citalopram, Celexa, some of you guys are on some of these. Prozac, there's a huge amount of people in the United States that are on Prozac, and that was a very big drug when it first came out. Luvox, which I have not seen a lot of. Paxil, which I've actually seen Paxil used a couple different ways. Paxil is used for people with racing heart rates, which they think is driven by anxiety, and it's fairly successful. Zoloft is a big one that I see a lot of people on. So this is usually the first medication that people get prescribed when they're bipolar because it has the least amount of side effects. Every med that you take, I don't care if it's for mental health, I don't care if it's a water pill, it has a side effect. Every single one of them. So then it becomes 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Should you take it and deal with the side effects, or are the side effects not going to bother you? So dopamine, there's thought to be very closely linked with people with dopamine and pleasure. So I would tend to guess that people who are really manic and just very euphoric have higher dopamine levels for a while. And all of a sudden, I would tend to think that your brain can only produce that for so long, and then it falls off. And then you become depressed, right? So both dopamine and serotonin directly affect how we digest food. Did you know that? I didn't know that when I read through this. And I thought, no wonder people who are under insane amounts of stress have really high cortisol levels. And they're like, I'm on a diet, I'm running 3 miles a day, I'm doing this, and my weight's never doing anything. Well, it's because your dopamine and serotonin levels might be off. And all of those hormones interplay with the cortisol hormones that are in your body. When you start to get stressed, that cortisol level gets high. And that's where you see, especially when like women, I'm not trying to pick on women in their 40s, but I might be a woman in my 40s. That's when you start getting belly fat, right? And you can't get rid of it. I have seen people who have had diabetes, which diabetes is actually a hormonal deficiency. And then they start taking insulin, and they're obese, and you can feel like their fat is like a brick. Like it's not like if you touch on fat, it's soft. It's like really hard, and they call that lipodystrophy. It's because their hormones are so off that it settles in your body. So your body will harbor extra hormones in all of your fat. So women who have had problems like conceiving children, if they lose a whole bunch of weight, are usually wind up getting pregnant because it shifts all your hormones. That was just a free caveat. Some people, it also affects how we sleep. So if your dopamine levels are all over the place, you will not have really good nights of sleep, which never help people who have mental health problems, right? But they don't help people in general. People were meant to sleep. We're cyclical beings. We have circadian rhythms. You know, it gets dark out at night for a reason. So, MAOI, monoamine oxidase inhibitors, inhibit the enzyme that metabolizes neurotransmitters as serotonin and norepinephrine. So I want to talk a little bit about norepinephrine. So norepinephrine and epinephrine are like sisters. And they come from a little tiny gland on top of your kidneys called your adrenal gland. And when you get afraid, when someone is yelling at you, when your heart rate starts going and your neck veins are bulging, that's because your epi and your norepinephrine have kicked in. And now all of a sudden, all your hormones are going to go wild, right? So every time someone loses control or they're super angry, their epinephrine level's high. Serotonin syndrome is something else I wanted to talk just a little bit about here. It is you have to be very careful when you're taking psych meds, and I have had a couple patients with something called serotonin syndrome, and they come in, they're extremely confused, their fevers are like 104.5, they don't know where they are, their sugars are all over the place, and it's because it's caused a neuroleptic syndrome in their brain, and everything in their body, all your hormones control everything that you do. It controls your temperature, it controls how much water balance you have in your body, all kinds of different hormones that I haven't even mentioned in here play into that. So people can get dangerously high levels of serotonin, and it can cause a metabolic disorder. So if you are struggling with bipolar and you're like, I didn't take my meds for 3 days, don't take them all at once. That's a bad idea, right? Just start back on them and keep it steady. The other thing that if you are on medications, don't just stop taking them. I see a lot of people that are struggling with bipolar and they're like, yeah, I was feeling really good and I stopped taking my meds. Yeah, don't do that. A lot of those medications that you're on, you have to go through a taper and taper off of them, because all of a sudden you've taken that medication there that was controlling some hormones in your brain and you've shut it off, and everything is just going to go wild. But if you were to taper off of it under the control of your doctor, you'll be way safer. And some people can go to their doctor and be like, I'm done, I don't want to take this anymore, it makes me feel terrible, and they'll do that. There's mood stabilizer medications for bipolar, there's antipsychotics, antidepressants, benzodiazepine. I'm a little leery about people taking benzodiazepines in the general public, and people do it all the time. Xanax is a benzodiazepine. Benzos can make people do things where they don't remember. And then Versed is what they give you when they give you surgery. They'll give you Versed and you don't remember anything. That's a real potent benzodiazepine. So I'm not saying don't take it. I'm just saying be cautious when you do take it. So how is bipolar diagnosed? Psychiatric or other mental health professionals, they should review both your medical history, the symptoms you're having and experiencing. There's no medical markers for this, but they should really actually get to know you. They should spend some time and invest in you. So that way they have a good baseline of where you're at and where you're coming from. How is it treated? You can treat it with psychotherapy, or therapy that they call it, psychotherapy. Drugs is one way, group settings alone. I think the most effective therapy that I have seen that's come out of psychiatry and medicine in general is CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, and I actually am a really big fan of that. I have seen it be highly successful. I've seen people do really well with it. I've seen people be able to identify their problems, identify the stress that it causes them, relationships, whatever else, look at the emotions, link to it, make a lot of I feel statements. I love I feel statements when we're having confrontation, because I just feel like they work so good. I'm like, I feel like this because this is what's happening. Check your perception of the situation. What kind of filters are you viewing and what's going on around you? So if you're that kid that grew up in that home where people were volatile, what happened to your filter? Did it get clogged? Are there some holes in it? Those are some things to think about. Stop and ask yourself, is my reaction to this issue balanced or out of proportion? I get really honest about just what triggered and me and that because some things like some days I'm like, I do not know why I'm mad about this because it really should not matter. Like, what in the world? This is not a big deal. Um, and so I have to stop and take it back a couple steps. And I'm like, okay, I get it. And at the end of that conversation in my own head, then I realize this is really not that big of a deal. So, what helps people in everyday life? There's all kinds of research right now that's coming out. I just read an article the other day about exercise. And I just find it amazing that I like to exercise myself. The general population, I'm not sure, is in the same camp as me. But the amount of endorphins that people get from exercising is astronomical, even if it's just going for a walk. But they're saying now, like people that are exercising on a regular basis, they're seeing way less problems with their bipolar. Which, in my opinion, I'm like, well, why didn't they talk about this years ago? Because people should be exercising. 60% of the United States right now falls in the category of morbidly obese. Part of it's our diet, right? If it didn't grow out on the tree or in your garden and it's been processed, it's not really that great of a food to eat. I'm not saying I'm at the correct weight I should be at, but I am saying if you look from a cardiology standpoint, their research says that if you are overweight but you exercise, you still have a lesser chance of getting heart disease than if you did nothing at all. So it's something to think about. And really, there's a lot of fun stuff to do in Minnesota. We're an outdoorsy kind of state, except for in the middle of winter. But I'm a snowshoer, so I guess I can make that work too. Keep a regular schedule, healthy sleeping habits, limit your caffeine. I think this is amazing how much people drink caffeine, especially since coffee shops have risen up. One, I think, what a waste of money, right? Like you're paying $5 for a cup of coffee. There's probably 700 calories in that cup of coffee. But what people don't realize is that caffeine doesn't clear your system. So I was working down in the metro and I took a different job. I actually work from my house right now. About a month ago, and I just quit drinking caffeine altogether and cut way down on sugar, and I was going through withdrawals like no other. But I slept way better. I sleep way better at night because caffeine stays in your system for quite a while, a lot longer than what people think. And it also drives your sugar around. So if you drink a lot of caffeine, all of a sudden you get the sugar or you get the caffeine shakes they call it. It's because your blood sugar is low. So think about that. People let their kids drink caffeine. I don't know why anyone would ever do that, but I've seen people do it. They're already hyper enough. Avoid drugs and alcohol. For people that are struggling with chemical dependency, that is not the medicine that you need to take ever, but it's certainly not going to help your bipolar, right? Have an emergency plan and a reliable support system. So some of the things I've seen when we talk about relationships and with people with bipolar, is I've seen people that are labeled bipolar, and I don't think they're bipolar. I think they're in a situation that's bad, right? I took care of a couple, and this is not, it goes either way, men and women abusing each other in relationships, where one spouse was labeled as bipolar because they were losing it over the way their other spouse acted, but everyone was focused on this person's just outrageous behavior. But what nobody was talking about is what this person over here was doing was wrong. But then there comes that whole codependency because, oh, I have this label and I have all these other things going on with me, and now I'm the problem, when really your reaction's the problem, but the problem is over here with the person that's abusing you. Right? So you have to stop and draw the line in the sand somewhere and say, I'm not going to put up with this because we're going back to that self-care. I need a safe place to be in. I just wanted to read one quick scripture with you before I'm throwing pens everywhere. Before I turn this back over to Pastor Mary, and that was Psalms 34:4. I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and he delivered me from all my fears. Those who look at him are radiant, and their faces are never covered with shame. The poor man called, and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of all his troubles, and the angels of the Lord encamps around those who fear him. Different kind of fear though, right? And delivers them. So think about that if you're struggling with mental health issues right now. I sought the Lord and he answered me. And he delivered me from all my fears. Because People who are struggling with chemical dependencies, people who are struggling with bipolar and having all sorts of problems like that, their next biggest fear is messing it up again, right? Your next biggest fear is, I don't want to go through what I just went through. I don't want to go spend another month in the hospital. I don't want to take a different medication. I don't want to apologize to somebody for the way I behaved. I don't want to feel that feeling that I didn't succeed, right? Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. Fear the Lord, you, his saints, for those who fear him lack nothing. The word fear there means to reverence him, right? The lions may grow weak and hungry, and those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. Come, my children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. Whoever of you loves life and desires to see many good days, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking lies. So I want to talk just a brief moment before I finish reading the rest of this. How many times when you guys when you meet people, or maybe you've done it yourself, and there's no shame in this, right? Because we're not shaming people, but you're like, yeah, this and this, and like I just met somebody the other day, and they're like, yes, I have bipolar. I literally just got this person's name. I have bipolar. I have ADD. I have this, that, and the other, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm like, I'm good. We're good. We can be friends. This is great. But how many times when people do that, are you setting yourself up to just always live out your label? Always live in that umbrella that you're under. I have bipolar, so I can't be like everybody else. I have ADHD, I can't be like everybody else. Well, why not? Why can't you? I've spent some time with some surgeons, and there's some personality funk there. That is a special breed of people. It takes a special person to walk into an OR, and I'm not trying to be graphic or gross, but the first time I watched surgery, I was like, what a bunch of barbarians. I have never seen anything like it. They walk in, they're like, what's the patient's name, date of birth, what's the procedure, and they just start cutting. What in the world? It takes a special brain to do that. They live in some sort of, I don't know what. But when you talk to a lot of surgeons and a lot of, like, you really get to know them, and you look at the symptoms of autism, I'm like, that's you. They're just super high functioning, not every surgeon, but they're just super high functioning, highly intellectual people that didn't develop emotionally. And you see that sometimes. There's a book out called Emotional IQ. I don't know if any of you have ever read it. Super awesome book. So you got to buy it and read it, because in there you take a test. Buy it new. You take a test that talks about your emotional IQ, and then you read the book, and it talks about all the different things that people can do to not let their emotions rule them. So part of having bipolar is not being able to rein in your emotions, right? Great book to read. So you take the test before, and then you take the test afterwards to see if it helped you any. But what I've noticed, and I have a couple of good friends that are really highly intelligent, and I'm sitting there trying to have a conversation with them, and they're like way above me, but emotionally, they're like down here. They're like a 2-year-old. So it's not, I mean, you can be smart and have both, but if you didn't get to develop both of those, it doesn't mean just because you're 35 that you're chronologically 35, you're emotionally 35. You're at the age of development that people keep pushing you to grow. So if you don't push your kids to grow in a healthy way, they stay arrested in that age that they're at. Everyone has their areas of arrestment. There's areas I'm sure I'm still a 2-year-old. I'm sure of it. And I'm okay with that, because I'm okay with me. I am okay in my own skin. Yeah. All right, back to this. All right, the lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. Come, my children, listen to me. I will teach you to fear the Lord. Whoever of you loves life and desires to see many good days, keep your tongue from evil. Stop speaking evil over yourself. Stop speaking a label over yourself you don't want. You get to be on the path that God wants you to be on, and nobody gets to disturb that. Right? You get to go every day to your Father and say, God, make me a better person today. Make me just a little bit better than I was the day before. And tomorrow make me just a little bit better than I was yesterday. And help me with my struggles. You don't have to wear that out on a sleeve. It's nothing to be ashamed of. If people have bipolar disorder, you have it. What are we going to do to help you be the best you? How are you going to live your best life? God can heal all your levels in your brain. He can fix what there is to fix, but you have to step in to a place of your life where that doesn't command what you do, and you rein those emotions in and you say, I can do this. I have a God that I serve. I can do this. I can't tell you how many times when I went through nursing school, I was like, I can do this. White knuckling it down the road. And there were some times I failed, and you know what? That's okay. I took microbiology 3 times, and I am still here today. And I don't use that class at all. But I just couldn't pass it. It was miserable. But I'm okay. And people can fail at things. It's okay, right? The best advice I got during that whole time when I was in college is you are never going to fail if you don't stop trying. So if it didn't work this way, then find a different way that it does. Right? Okay. Turn from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. I remember the very first time I read this and I thought, I'm going to seek peace. And it was like an explosion went off in my life. And I thought, that's all right, I'm going to plow through this and seek peace anyways. And I got it. Peace does not come to people. You pursue peace, right? You set yourself up to live in peace. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and the ears are attentive to their cry. The face of the Lord is against those who do evil, to cut the memory off of them from earth. The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. I bet you guys have had some heartbreak in here, right? Right. And says, those who are crushed in spirit, a righteous man may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers him from them all. Right? He protects all his bones, not one of them will be broken. Evil may slay the wicked, and the foes of the righteous will be condemned. The Lord redeems his servants. No one will be condemned who takes refuge in him. If you have to read that to yourself every day, do it. There were times growing up, I hated my father, and I'm sure Mary said the same thing up here. Like, I just had very strong feelings against him. And I can remember moving out of the house and just being bitter and angry. And I can remember driving down 694. I forgive him. Like, 15-minute drive down 694 for days. For days I had to do it till I finally felt it. So when you're looking at struggling with bipolar, struggling with depression, right, and having trauma, depression is one thing and one thing only. It is anger turned inward. When you don't resolve that anger, it rules your life. You could be angry at your neighbor, and they're probably going to go to bed every night and not worry twice about it, right? It's like taking poison and hoping somebody else gets sick from it. The greatest gift you can give your mental health is resolution. Resolve that anger. Set yourself up for success. Just because there's a label in a chart, somebody said whatever, were they a qualified person to say it? Did they invest some time into you? Do they know your history? Are they willing to try every other alternative with you? Or is it just a label? Stop and think about that. That's all I got.
Thank you so much.